A 12-year-old girl named Joanna closed the door behind her. The damp kiss from her father still lingered on her forehead. Tonight, they had planned to watch a new Netflix movie. And Jim, her father, had said he would buy some snacks, or junk food, on the way back for a cozy viewing. Tonight, there would be chips, popcorn, and great emotions. Their relationship was warm and trusting. Her father, an engineer, always found time for his daughter despite his busy schedule. They often went for walks together, watched movies, and talked about everything under the sun. Joanna felt safe with him. After her mother's death, she and her father had taken care of each other, cherishing the time they spent together. That evening, her father had warned her that he needed to make a quick trip to the office, which was a kilometer away, and would stop by the store on the way back. She had a strange and unsettling dream. She was standing on the side of a busy highway, and on the other side of the road was her father. He was shouting something to her. Her heart raced. She jumped out of bed, ran to the door, and looked through the peephole. Her father was standing on the doorstep. Joanna reached for the lock. The doorbell rang again. "Dad?" she called softly. "Ding, ding, ding." "Dad, answer me." Her voice trembled. "Ding, ding, ding." "Is someone there with you?" "Ding, ding, ding." "Dad, why aren't you answering?" Tears welled up in her eyes. "Ding, ding, ding." "I won't open the door until you answer me," she shouted, feeling fear grip her body. But her father remained silent. The doorbell continued, monotonous and persistent. Trembling, Joanna crawled into a corner of the hallway and curled up into a ball. She didn't understand what was happening, but her intuition told her something was wrong. The minutes dragged on like hours. The doorbell didn't stop, but the girl didn't move. At some point, exhausted, she drifted into unconsciousness. At dawn, Joanna woke up. The apartment was quiet. She lifted her head and listened. The doorbell had stopped. Cautiously, she crept to the door and looked through the peephole again. Her father was still standing there, his face turned toward her. Summoning all her courage, she slowly opened the door. What she saw made her scream. Nailed to the door at eye level was the severed head of her father. The face she had seen through the peephole wasn't alive. It was just a head, attached with nails. A note hung on the doorbell. With trembling hands, Joanna took it and read, "Smart girl." The girl screamed, and her cry echoed through the house. The neighbors, hearing the commotion, called the police. When the officers arrived, they found Joanna in shock, sitting on the floor next to the horrific gift. The investigation revealed that her father had been kidnapped and murdered by unknown assailants who, it seemed, had been watching their home. The note on the door served as a sinister reminder that Joanna could have been the next victim if she had opened the door. A warm autumn night turned into the most dangerous moment of my life. A sudden call from the office. Server issues. Critical, urgent action required. With a heavy sigh, I got out of bed, dressed hastily, and headed for the door. The clock showed 2 a.m. The city was asleep. The hallway beyond the entrance door was dimly lit, with only the faint glow of the elevator bulb illuminating the space. I pressed the button, feeling a shiver rise, not so much from the cold, but from a bad premonition. The elevator took its time, but I waited patiently, studying my reflection in the glass of the neighboring door. Finally, the doors opened, and before me stood a man in a dark jacket and a cap, pulled so low that his face was invisible. Something about his posture, the strange tension in his shoulders, made me slightly nervous. A bit late for a stroll, flashed through my mind. For a moment, I considered taking the stairs, but work was calling. "Good evening." I forced out a greeting, stepping into the cabin. He remained silent, only nodding toward the button panel. I felt a cold sting in my lower chest. My breath hitched. Both his hands were in his pockets, and I could almost hear something clicking inside. A metallic sound. We descended. The seconds dragged on painfully. Our eyes never met, but the feeling that he was studying me didn't leave. The cabin was cramped, the air thick, and every breath felt heavy. Finally, the elevator jerked to a stop. The doors opened, and my companion stepped out abruptly, brushing my shoulder. The unpleasant sensation of his touch lingered, as if an invisible mark had been left where he'd pushed me. 2 hours later, I returned home. As I took off my jacket, I noticed a stain on the fabric. Dark, sticky, unpleasantly cold. Blood flashed through my mind, and something clenched in my chest. I tried to wipe it off, but my fingers trembled, refusing to cooperate. Nonsense, I told myself, trying to suppress the rising fear. Probably just paint. I undressed and went to bed. Sleep came quickly. However, I was soon awakened by a sharp sound. Someone was knocking insistently on the door. Rubbing my eyes, I glanced at the clock. It was 6:45 a.m. Who is it? I thought, approaching the door and peered through the peephole. A police officer stood outside. His face was serious, his gaze sharp and cold. I fastened the door chain and unlocked the door. "Sorry to bother you. There's been an incident in your building," he said. "Did you see anyone suspicious last night?" Remembering the strange man from the elevator, I froze for a second. But something inside made me lie. Perhaps the fear of encountering that mysterious stranger again was stronger. "No, I didn't see anyone," I replied. The officer nodded, thanked me, and quickly left, leaving me bewildered. My heart pounded dully. The next morning, the news reported a brutal murder in our building. Surveillance cameras had captured the criminal's face. Hearing the anchor's voice, I froze, unable to look away from the screen. In the footage, from under the cap of the man in the dark jacket, a face flashed for a split second. The face of the same police officer who had knocked on my door. One evening, a married couple decided to go to the movies, leaving their children in the care of a young babysitter. The kids were already asleep, so the girl just needed to be in the house just in case. The parents left, leaving her with instructions and saying goodnight. The girl settled down on the couch, but soon she was bored. She decided to turn on the television to pass the time. However, before doing so, she called her parents to ask permission. "Can I turn on the TV?" she asked. "Of course, turn it on," her father replied. But she had one more request. She nervously looked out the window, where she could see the statue of an angel in the moonlight. Her cold, stone gaze seemed to penetrate right into the house. "Can I cover the angel statue outside the window with something? It scares me," said the girl, trying to sound calm. There was silence on the other end of the wire. The girl heard her father catch his breath. "Take the children and run away from the house," he finally said, his voice trembling. "We'll call the police. We don't have an angel statue." The girl felt a cold wave of fear sweep through her body. She cast a glance at the window. The statue was still there, its stone wings lightly illuminated by the moonlight. But now, it seemed closer than before. "What?" she began, but her father had already hung up the phone. The girl's heart pounded frantically. She rushed into the nursery where the two little ones were sleeping. Waking them up, she grabbed them in her arms and ran to the door. But at that moment, the light in the house went out. In the total darkness, she heard a sound, a thudding, heavy footstep, like a stone hitting the ground. She froze, feeling cold sweat run down her back. "Who's there?" she whispered, but there was no answer. Suddenly, the light came back on. The girl turned around and saw that the angel statue was now standing in the hallway, right in front of her. Its stone face seemed to be smiling, and its eyes, empty and lifeless, were staring straight at her. The girl screamed and rushed to the door, but it wouldn't open. She tugged on the knob, but it was as if the door had frozen in place. "Please let us go," She shouted, but the statue slowly approached, its stone wings creaking as if they were real. The children cried, clinging to her. She tried to call the police, but the phone didn't work. Suddenly, the lights went out again. The girl felt a cold stone touch her hand. She screamed, but her voice was cut short. When the police and parents arrived on the spot, they found the house empty. The children, the babysitter, were nowhere to be found. The only thing they found were footprints on the floor, as if something heavy and stone had been pulled around the house. There was no angel statue. It had never been found. But another strange thing that confused the police was that a babysitter girl with that name and address did not exist, and there was no record of her. No one has lived in the house since. They say that sometimes, on moonlit nights, you can see the shadow of a stone angel standing outside the window. And if you hear muffled footsteps, it's best not to look back.